where there was a long ball. And our primary focus here is on two things: the distance that is traveled by the ball, the speed of the ball, as well as whether or not the player could have naturally been able to position himself and control the movement of his body. Now, I'm circling that player because that's the player that halves the distance between the kicker and the player that ultimately heads the ball to the man in an offside position. At that moment, he's still hoping that the teammate may catch the ball. So what VAR would have looked at is the distance between that moment when the ball has gone past his teammate to the moment where he instinctively jumps to try and defend. And that's why it was considered a deflection rather than deliberate play when, that went wrong. So in that instance, the VAR was spot on in seeing that that's a deflection, it's an instinctive jump. The player has no way of controlling the movement of his body. The ball was fast, it was coming from a very short distance. So those are the variables that they would have looked at. There is no question about whether or not the player who ultimately scores the goal was in an offside position. But if the defender had had an opportunity to control his body movement, look at those lines there, clearly in an offside position.
Yes.
But both the speed and the short distance that the ball had to travel before he instinctively tried to defend that convinced VAR that it was not deliberate play, but was an attempt to save the ball.
And when you're stretching, when you're reaching, those are considerations for the referee to look at to say no, and he would have been having that conversation here. The VAR assistant referees, Issa C and Jabril Kamara, in the referee's ear there, saying pretty much what Ace was saying. Watch Mbogazi, watch that he's stretching, watch that he's not really in a position to deliberately play that ball. And now we have to decide that it was offside on Fiston Mayela.
Yeah, and of course, once you've come to that conclusion that it wasn't, he was not in control of that header, that it was almost a deflection, you then go back to the pass from when the pass was made to make the decision, and that's very clear.
Look at this tweet here, and it says here, can Mr. Spot On compare Pyramid's goal that was disallowed by VAR and the offside goal that was scored by Mango against Sundowns while he is at it? So you know what we do, right? Like you ask, we deliver. So, and it's almost a year ago.
And sometimes
like,
we deliver even before you ask.
It was on the 16th of April that you actually had to be on the show and discuss the situation. So let's look at it one more time and see how it was that Divine Lunga and Gabadino Mango here. Lunga's header, and there it is. A completely different situation because this goal is allowed, even though Mango was in an offside situation. But similar.
The goal is allowed because the distance that the ball traveled, together with the fact that it was pretty slow, hung up in the air, gave him enough opportunity. There was no player in front of him that he could have thought that would receive the ball before him. It became a deliberate play situation.
Because he is trying to find a teammate with the header here, Divine Lunga.
And look at that distance. Look at that ball hanging in the air. And he's giving it to a teammate. He has had all the time to control the movement of his body, but then, by mistake, he heads it to an opponent. It's not a deflection. He was playing the ball, deliberately playing the ball. That's the difference.
And there it is. The conversation did take place because initially offside was given in this. Then the referees without VAR,
yeah, I know.
Nobody saw that actually goal except the VAR. The Pirates players were comfortable. The Pyramids players were celebrating. It was only Mr. Ref was on screen. And then suddenly,
Yeah, no, look, a goal or no goal is one of the incidents that VAR has to check. Once a goal is scored, VAR must go through what happened prior to that ball crossing the line. And when they check, they will then communicate with the on-field referee. Remember, a decision has already been taken at that moment.
Everybody, the assistant's running, the referee's gone.
The referee is gone, but VAR picks up that before the ball goes into goal, it strikes a striker's arm.
Ogula standing there.
Right? Now,
Da.
even if that ball had struck his arm and fallen favorably for a teammate, the goal would still not be ruled as legitimate. And that's because even with an accidental handling of the ball, you cannot score directly from a handball.
And it's not even just a handball. I mean, the rules are even further in that situation. The entire arm counts.
The
entire arm, if it comes off anywhere on the arm and results in a goal, whether it's accidental, whether it's anything.
No, remember, when we say handball, we include the arm from armpit level all the way to your fingertip. That's all a handball. So the ball was handled in that instance and went directly into goal. And in terms of the law, you can't score using your arm. Whether it's an accidental touch of the ball with your arm or your hand, no goal can result therefrom. The post-match interview with the coach, you know, lamenting even the usage of VAR, and I was thinking to myself, he knew before the match started that VAR would be utilized. But let's go to those incidents because, you know, with VAR, they can get it wrong sometimes. We look at that player that we're highlighting there in the middle. He's going to receive the ball and head it. That's the player that heads it. What happens next, even before the player who ultimately goes forward to score the goal comes up? Look at the assistant referee, bottom right of your screen.
The flag's up.
The flag is up already because it is not the player that scores the goal who was in an offside position. It is the player who was, in fact, involved in the assist who was in the offside position. Look at him there. Clearly in an offside position, flag stays down until that moment when he heads the ball. And that's when the flag
onside when he heads it, but when the ball is played.
When the ball was
offside.
played, he was in an offside position and he came to be involved with active play, and that's why the flag went up.
I have a question for you, though. That flag going up, I thought the assistants were not meant to flag in a situation where there could be a goal, because you never know, right? You put the flag up in that situation, suddenly VAR sees something, but the flag is up. Should you not have just kept it down?
No, for that particular incident, it was correct to simply lift it up because the player came clearly from an offside position, went back to receive the ball directly from a teammate. That flag needed no VAR.
But for me, it's a spot-on decision, and it just says to any young striker or young attacker watching to say, don't be lazy. The ball is cleared. You just need to push up with the rest of the Sundowns line. Then you've got a goal, an away goal for yourself. Because in that instance, Gradisia, the guy that scores the goal, is in an onside position. But the man that is offside is the man that is lazy to push up with the rest of the
Just
defense.
1 meter.
Just 1 meter.
Just 1 meter.
Spot-on decision. I thought it was excellent.
Well, it did need VAR because it was close. And VAR coming up with the correct decision there because there were celebrations, Matt. Everybody was comfortable with that. Referee was pointing to the halfway line saying it's a goal, and then there was a long delay and lots of waiting for them to actually truly assess that. So as much as the assistant was so quick with that flag, there was a long time before we actually got verification.
You know, the linesman to get that right in the first time was incredible because there was also a third man running in behind the header. There was another body, a red body, around the area. So for him to follow the player and realize that he had come in from an offside position, very good decision from the lino.
Ace, one more offside decision that's given. So that one was the first one, 92nd minute of the game. There's also another one that flies in the back of the net, and you think, ooh, this was also tight.
You know, I understand why the coach says, in my head, it's 2-0. I have 2 goals, and I don't care about technology. But let's go and see what the technology brings up. Now, this situation here is very confusing. I must concede a very confusing situation because both the assistant referee and the referee run and follow that striker. And yet it comes to this moment where the assistant referee indicates for an offside. Who gave the offside? Because definitely it's not the assistant referee. Look at that. He's in line. He fails to pick up that at the moment the ball is kicked by a teammate, that moment, the player is in an offside position. He continues to run with the player. That's the moment he should have picked up his flag.
But this is what I was saying to you. When you're not sure, leave it for VAR, right? If you're the assistant here, you're not sure. Is she?
I get that and I agree with you. But at what stage does he then lift up his flag? That's the most confusing thing. But I saw the referee blowing the whistle and raising his arm so that there is an on-field decision. Remember that VAR, even though VAR checks every goal or no goal decision, but there must first be an on-field decision first.
I mean, among your assistant, I don't raise